About a decade ago, I started learning graphic design. I started learning technology. I started learning how to use a computer. I started learning how to put slides together. I started learning what made what graphics were appealing to people. I started watching marketing ads. I started looking at believe it or not, when Netflix came out, they had those cool the pictures on the front of the movies. What I did was I looked at those and I copied those and I tried to make them, look really cool for church type of stuff. I thought, well, if they can do this in the secular world, we can do this in the church. And I learned a whole bunch of stuff just from watching what I was doing. And when I started, I wasn't really that good at it. In fact, I was terrible at it. My flyers needed as much help as church flyers need today. But I got better the longer that I stuck with it, and the longer that I worked at it, and the more that I saw what it was that was appealing to people and what was appealing to the eye and what caught people's attention, the better I got. And the more attention my graphics got, and the more attention our videos on YouTube got. And I got better and better. And what I really learned from that was that if you stick with it, you can get really good at it. And that's with anything. That's with following Jesus. If you lack Bible knowledge, you know where you need to go to get Bible knowledge? Take a wild guess. The Bible. If you struggle with prayer and talking to God and praying to God, guess what you need to do? Pray. Talk to God. That's what He wants. He wants you to talk to Him. The struggle with all of this kind of stuff, and the problem that we face in this world is that a lot of people start and don't finish. A lot of people start something, look at something, and they go, I can do that. And they start it and then they never finish it. And I'm sure you're aware of the stories that have taken place with people getting baptized and immersed into Christ and being on fire for the Lord. And then walking away because, it just didn't work out the way I thought it would. In fact, I can tell you a story. I was about 18 or 19 years old. We were at Bible camp. And there was a friend of mine that was dating a girl at our church, because back in that days, that's what you did. If a girl went to church, you went to church with her. And the only reason I was in church was because there was a girl there for me and a girl there with me. And that's what got me in there. And so that's what seemed to be happening. There was a lot of young girls, and they were bringing a lot of young guys. And there's this one guy who was dating this girl, and her parents said, you can't date somebody who's not a Christian, which I think is a pretty good rule, but can be a little restricting at times. It's a pretty good rule because, then, if he's a Christian, then we're on the same page, and there's no problems, even though there can still be some problems. And I remember this guy when he came in, he was really nice, and I was really excited because I finally had somebody my age in this church. There were about 35 people, and it was me and 6 girls. Okay, that was it. And I was only there for one girl. And so when this guy came in, and I was like, man, yeah, another dude, awesome. I was so excited, and I thought I was going to have a buddy because I just try to make friends with everybody. And we got along right away, and soon enough the preacher got to him, and the preacher's like, hey, you want to come over to my house and study? And he studied, and then he got baptized. And I was so proud of him. I was so excited for him. And I was like, man, it was so encouraging to see somebody else do that, even though I myself hadn't done it at that time. I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. And I started to feel the pressure of getting baptized. Well, this guy, he's only been coming for like 3 months, and he got baptized, and he's dating this girl because, maybe I should do something like that. And all these thoughts circling through my mind. And then they broke up about 6 months later. Guess where he was? I don't know, but he wasn't at church. He didn't show up for Bible class. He didn't show up for worship. He wouldn't return phone calls. He wouldn't return text messages. He just disappeared. Fell off the face of the planet. I got so many more stories like that. So many people have been immersed into Christ. And they come out of the water and they're excited. But because they did it for the wrong reasons, it didn't stick. And that's part of our problem, right? We can put a number of things right here. Blank starts our journey but doesn't finish it. Emotion starts our journey but doesn't finish it. We see this at camp all the time. One kid comes in, and they're excited, and they get baptized, and it starts this chain reaction of baptisms based on emotion. I feel this, so I'm going to do it. But their attachment, and their attachment is purely to the emotion. It starts their journey, but it doesn't carry them through. And that's the thing we all deal with. Another one we can say is pressure starts our story. Fear starts our story. Joy, excitement, enthusiasm starts our story, but it doesn't finish it. When we drive life on these emotions and these things that we feel, but our intelligence and our intellect is not attached to them, there's no reason for us to go back once the emotion has faded. So we start and never finish. And we think starting is so important, don't we? We think starting is the end all. When we started, at least we did it, right? At least we did it. We didn't finish it, but we did it. We started it. And we started this chain reaction, and you start looking at these stories of people who've come to Christ, who've been immersed into Him, who've become disciples, who've become active members in the church, and they get baptized because of one reason or another. They get baptized because of an emotion, or because of a person, or because somebody said something, or because there's pressure. Pressure that I resisted for 3 years because I want to make sure I didn't do it for Cheyenne, I did it for me. I did it because I love Jesus. That when I started, I was going to be 2 feet in and I was going to finish. And I was going to finish well. Because over a period of time, this is what you learn. It's not about how you start, but how you finish. It's not about how you start your walk in Christianity. It's about how you finish that walk. It's about how you finish. But we don't think about that. Because we're short-sighted human beings, and we're only thinking about tomorrow, and we're only thinking about what's in front of us. And most of you are just thinking about what you're going to eat after church. I know it. It keeps circling your mind, coming back. Oh, he said start. Well, start lunch or start worship or start the sermon. But the idea that we have to understand is it's finishing that counts. If you run a marathon, and you only run a mile into the marathon, did you run a marathon? No. But if you run all 26 miles of that marathon, did you run a marathon? Yeah. You can say you ran a marathon. The only other mile, you could just say, well, I ran a mile in a marathon, but I got tired, I got winded, because cardio is all our favorite thing, and we all love to go out for a jog in the evenings. That doesn't sound like it's very fun to me, but if that's what you like to do, that's up to you. But it's about finishing what we started. And thankfully, Jesus talks about this. Thankfully, Jesus gives us some insight into what this looks like. Now, the passage that was read by our brother Joey is just the context before. What is Jesus talking about? Who's he talking to? We read all these texts and we read these parables and we look at these things and we don't hardly ever consider who it is that Jesus is actually talking to. Now, there's 2 things we have to consider here. The first one is in Luke chapter 14 and verse 1. Jesus is at a dinner with a ruler of the Pharisees. And there he heals a man, and they ask him a question, and he gives them a question back that they cannot answer. Then he makes an observation that sends him into this one big parable about the invited guests. And it says that he saw these people choosing places of honor. He saw these people choosing seats at the front. And Jesus gives them this parable about choose a seat at the back. And then this parable about invited guests. If your friends won't come, if people are making excuses in your life, if whatever's happening, don't invite the people who can repay you. Invite the people who can't repay you. And then as these large crowds are following him after this session of parables, he tells them something. He says something to the disciples that makes Jesus kind of sound crazy. Now, before you judge what that is, it says, now large crowds were going along with him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, he cannot be a disciple. So what can't we hate, Jesus? Anybody have that friend that just says what stuff they're not supposed to say? You're like, dude, you can't say that. And my mother used to tell me that all the time, right? She would be like, I'd say something about, I'd see something and I'd just say what first thing that came to my mind, and she'd smack me. Nick, you can't say that. What do you mean I can't say that? That's what I thought. That's what this feels like, doesn't it? That friend that just says stuff that you're not supposed to say. So who can be my disciple? Who can be Jesus' disciple? If you got to hate these people? No, he's not saying hate in the sense that like you have to have a rage-filled hate towards these people. What he's saying is in contrast to me and your love for me, you have to hate all of those things. Because think about the reversal. Think about, if you love your family more than you love Jesus, you'll always serve your family and not Jesus. But if you love Jesus and you serve Jesus, you'll always serve your family. You'll always serve your family if Jesus comes first in your life. If Jesus is the center of who you are, if he's the reason that you do things, if he's the reason that you tell the gospel of Jesus and that you share the word with others and love the people around you. I mean, that's better than just being this self-centered, well, I got to take care of this and that and the other, and I don't have time for God, which seems to be what our society is dealing with the most. Well, I don't have time for God. I want to be around family. I want to be around people. I want to do what I want to do. I want to do when I want to do it. And I don't want to concede my own will to a God who has never shown himself. Right? Isn't that our world? God doesn't exist. He's not here. So who can be Jesus' disciple? The principle is, from this, obviously, the disciples don't understand what in the world Jesus is talking about. You got to hate your father, your mother, your wife, your children, your brothers, your sisters, and even your own life? If you don't hate those things, you can't be my disciple? What does that mean? Well, to explain this further, he gives us two illustrations. He gives us two illustrations. One about a man who is building a tower, and another about a king who is considering war. But before that, he says, whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be thy disciple. Now pay attention to that phrase because it's threaded throughout this text. But the first illustration goes like this. For which of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? That might be a very important thing to do. Would it not? It might be a very important thing to do to say, you know what, I have enough money to buy all that wood, to hire help, to get an architect, to build a structure. Do I have enough of that? Instead of, we have this impulsive nature where I'm just going to do things. I have this problem. I just want to go. I don't want to sit. I want to think. But as I've gotten older, I've really felt like I've done a better job at sitting back and considering what it is that I'm doing. What am I trying to build here? What am I trying to do here? What's the end game? Thank you, Siri. She thought I was asking her the time. Apparently, she wants to listen to my sermon too. But now you got to be quiet, okay? But it might be a pretty important thing to calculate, to consider, to reason, to think about what it is that you're doing before you do it, right? If you're going to, I don't know, what's a crazy thing? First thing that comes to my mind is base jumping, okay? You're going to jump off a tall building. You better have a parachute, right? And you better have life insurance if that parachute doesn't open, okay? You got to think about what you're doing before you do it. And we're in an age where that doesn't happen. The older generation, you guys have done a somewhat good job. You're a lot older, and you've gone through a lot more life's trials, and you've seen a lot more life, and you understand some different things. And I'm sure in your time you did some dumb stuff just like we're doing now. But you see the impulsive nature of people. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to do it. And I'm not going to think about it. And it's the same way people react to Christianity. They feel this emotion or they feel this pressure. They're like, I got to do this. I got to get baptized. I got to follow Jesus. I got to do this thing. But they don't ever consider what it is. They don't use their heart and their head to make their decision. They only use their heart. So he further illustrates this. Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and it is not able to finish, all who observe it begin to ridicule him, saying, this man has began to build, but he cannot finish. What a shame. What a tragedy when somebody comes to Jesus, follows him, and then walks away. Doesn't turn their head to the church anymore, doesn't even consider the Bible something that they would read. They're just concerned with money and life, and that's what it's all about. And it's not about something more than yourself. Because what they didn't do when they started was count the cost. What am I going to have to give up? Who do I have to become? And where is this taking me? Because if it's taking me down a path I really can't go, if the end looks good but I can't see it, maybe I should take a little more time to think about what I'm doing. And the second illustration is even more in-depth than that. He talks about a man with power. What king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, apparently this was common in those days, will not first sit down and consider, we could use your head right there, whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to counter the one coming against him with 20,000. Now, there's a couple things to pull out here, right? Whether or not he is strong enough. Now, consider the differences of thinking. If that king says, well, I'm going to go for it, right? I got 10,000 men. I can take this guy on. I'm going to go win. I'm going to go beat these guys down. That's not wisdom. That's foolishness. It means he didn't really think about what it was that he was doing, but a king who sits down and considers and sits there and thinks, or while the other is still far away, sends delegation to ask for terms of peace. To me, would seem like a wise king. Would seem like somebody that sat down and thought about what they were going to do before they were going to do it. And considered all the options, considered every avenue, looked at everything they did. Now here's the thing that we've got to remember about this. There are people that we know that are in that situation. People that we know that went off. They're not a part of the church anymore, but they were at one time. You probably know more of them here in this town than I do. You probably know the people who've struggled with sin in the past and thought that their sin could keep them from coming to Jesus. People who didn't think before they acted. People who just kind of do stuff impulsively. Maybe we can encourage those people. Maybe we can help bring them back to the Lord. Maybe we can teach them. Or maybe when we start with somebody, when we're in a Bible study and we're studying with someone who wants to become a follower of Jesus, we bring this passage up and we say, you got to count the cost. Is it something you're willing to give up? Are you willing to put Jesus first in your life? Now, the walk of a Christian is hard, and it's not, a 30-day walk. We're not talking about a day that's like, okay, 5 out of 7 days I'm going to be a Christian, right? 5 out of 7 days, I'm going to act like Jesus. I'm going to talk like Jesus. I'm going to be like Jesus for 5 out of 7 days. But that Friday, Saturday, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to be totally not a Christian. It doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. You being a Christian 5 out of 7 days a week doesn't work. Because it really puts into question whether or not you really believe. So what, Sunday through Thursday, you're doing good, and then Friday, Saturday, you kind of, I'm all right, I'll be good. I'm okay. Right, means you didn't really think about what you were going to do before you did it. So then none of you can be my disciple who does not give it up all his own possessions. Again, we could look at Jesus and think he's crazy, or consider what he's actually saying. Consider what he's saying is that when you decide to follow Jesus, it's going to be something that takes a part of your life. It's going to be something that puts you in a position that you may not necessarily be comfortable with. It's going to put you in trials and temptations, and you're going to have a knowledge of what I am to and what I am not to do. And you have to maintain, and you have to have faith, and you have to believe, and you have to rely on your brethren now. And as easy as that might sound, it's hard for a lot of people. It's hard for a lot of people to give their whole life to Jesus. may seem easy to you, sound easy to you, no question for you. But to people in the world, why do I want to change who I am to be like Jesus? Why do I want to run that race? Why do I want to be with God? What's so great about God? But I don't wonder, perhaps, if those are the people we need to be chasing. The people who contemplate. The people who consider. The people who digest. Think about what it is. What am I really doing? Why am I doing it? The people who question everything for every reason. If you got somebody who is asking you questions or fighting against God, just be patient. Wait that out. Feed information. Because those people need Jesus too. There's one other passage I want us to consider as we think about this idea of thinking about what you're doing before you're doing it. And that comes in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Now, to set this up for us, you have to go back to chapter 11, because chapter 11 really tells the story of verses 1 and 2. It really tells us why in the world is the Hebrew writer saying this. Therefore, since we have a great cloud of witnesses, why is he saying that? Why is he putting that there? Well, all of chapter 11 is about the people who lived a life faithful to God, who endured the trials, who struggled with temptation and overcame things because they had God in their life. And they ran the race and they finished well. And the Hebrew writer explains it. Let us lay aside, put aside everything. Just like Jesus saying, take up your cross. Every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of God, right hand of the throne of God. Now think about this for a minute. Let's go back here and just examine what it is that the writer is actually telling us. Because the writer understands something, and we understand something about Christianity that it's Paul would put it in terms of it's a walk. It's a walk with Jesus. It's walking in a way that is worthy of your calling. But it's a long walk. It's a race. It's a destination. I once heard someone say, the man who enjoys walking will walk further than the man who enjoys the destination. So what if we thought about Christianity? What if we just loved God? What if we didn't worry about what it looked like or where it was or when it was or who it was? What if we just loved God and walked with him and lived like he and tried to imitate his life and enjoyed that part of life? Instead of looking to them, I'm going to heaven, I'm going to be up in heaven. What if we just loved God? What if we just looked at God like he's standing right next to us? And he's a friend, and he's somebody we can talk to, and somebody we can share our struggles with, and somebody that has the power to help us through the things we deal with. So we could walk that marathon and finish well. So here's your application. Pace yourself and finish well. Those, when I was in high school, there was two types of kids, maybe three. But there was mainly two types of kid on the track. There was a kid who was a try-hard, and he's, I'm running down the... And there was the kid who walked as slow as he could, but just fast enough to make the time. Cut, so he didn't have to do it again the next week. And they did the same thing. And then there was the kid in the middle, and I think this is the other kid, where he would walk-run. He would run sometimes, he would walk sometimes. He would run sometimes, he would walk sometimes. And the kids who ran fast ran out of breath the fastest. And the kids who relied on if you rely on impulsivity And I got to be first, and I got to win, and I got to go here, and I got to do this, instead of saying, you know what, I just want to finish, and I want to finish well. It doesn't have to be a 6-minute mile. That could be a 8.5-minute mile, 10-minute mile. I'm okay with that now. But if I run out of breath and I don't make that time, what's the cost? If we pace ourselves and walk with God. Because really, it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. How do you want to finish? Is the question you need to be asked. Not why, because I think everybody knows why. But you got to know how. How do you want to finish? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind for your children and your children's children? What kind of person do you want to be known as by the people in your community? What kind of people do you want to be known as by the people in your church? Where do you want to stand on Judgment Day? Who do you want to be with? And if we can figure those things out, we can put a stake in the ground. And we can say, there. And along the way, we enjoy the walk with God. We can live a full, happy, quiet life and be with Jesus when it all ends. So you are just starting out. You're a new Christian, you're not a Christian, you're non-Christian, whatever you are. Maybe you come to church, sometimes you don't come to church at all. If you're thinking about Jesus or you're even starting to follow Jesus, let me encourage you to pace yourself. And for those of you who are well on your way to finishing, finish well. Finish well. Look forward to the time that you get to stand with Jesus, sit with Jesus, talk with Jesus, and be with the people that you love that are there. Consider what direction you're going. Reflect on your life. Am I doing enough? But how's my relationship with God really? What does that look like? Does it drive me? Does it motivate me? Does it push me to be better today than I was yesterday?